I didn't mean to end up with 300 Nintendo Switch games. In fact, for a long time, I wasn't even trying to seriously collect for the system. But, somewhere along the way, the Nintendo Switch became the most fun console I've ever collected for. Not because every game is valuable, not because I'm chasing a full set, but because collecting for this thing genuinely feels like an adventure. When people think of a collection of 300 games, they think, oh, it's been boosted with shovelware or sports games just to fill up a number. But this collection is completely different, because this collection was never, ever about owning everything. I wanted a library where somebody could walk into the room, peruse the shelves, and find something they'd love. It might be a game that they're already aware of, or it might be a hidden gem. But the thing is about the Nintendo Switch, it's just been incredibly, and I mean incredibly, fun to collect for. The thing that makes Nintendo Switch collecting so interesting is that hidden gems still actually exist. When you collect for older systems now, the must-own games are already established. Everybody knows the grails, everybody knows the expensive titles, everybody knows the hidden gems. But with the Switch, it still feels like we're discovering the library in real time. Every few months there's another strange RPG, another indie darling, another game you randomly stumble across in a shop and immediately become curious about. And because of that, every hunt still feels exciting. I think that is what has surprised me the most. I started buying games not due to prestige, but because, oh, that's got an interesting art style, and oh, that looks like a game that might be interesting to play, and suddenly I had a collection full of games that I genuinely care about. Not necessarily because they're rare, but because each one is a discovery on itself. And honestly, I don't think the Nintendo Switch becomes this collectible without Nintendo absolutely nailing their first party lineup. Zelda, Mario, Smash Bros, Xenoblade, Metroid, Pikmin, even titles like Advance Wars and Emu the Smiling Man. Nintendo remembered how important variety is. Massive open world adventures, platformers, strategy games, RPGs, party games, comfy games, weird experimental stuff. There was always something new pulling different people into the ecosystem. And I think that's part of why the Switch library feels so special now. Because the big Nintendo games brought people in, but the deeper you got into the system, the stranger and more interesting the library became. I think that's one of the great things about collecting for the Nintendo Switch. It makes you feel younger. That feeling of walking into a shop and just finding something completely out of left field that you've never heard of before. Now obviously the internet exists, reviews are in the palm of your hand, YouTube exists to see a playthrough or a review almost immediately. But the Switch still has that little feeling of coming across something in the wild and just that unknown. Oh, is this a good game? Look on the back, oh, is this interesting enough to try out? And while you get that with other consoles, I feel something different with the Nintendo Switch. A lot of other consoles you'll see walls full of FIFA or Call of Duty. Switch, walls full of Mario, Zelda, and the odd hidden gem here and there. Now, the Nintendo Switch might also be the most FOMO driven console I've ever collected for. Games disappear fast. Print runs are inconsistent. Publishers shut pre-orders forever. And suddenly you're buying games because you're scared they'll vanish. And that's the dangerous part. And honestly, I think it's changed collecting culture in ways that aren't always healthy. But at the same time, it's also created one of the most fascinating physical libraries gaming has ever seen. And a collector's culture that is completely different to anything I've seen before. Now, at some point I had to make a choice with collecting. I could have just went out and bought every brand new release out there, but that's not for me. There's so many Switch games that just don't appeal to me. So many very kiddies games, shovelware games, games that just don't mean anything. And of course we have the other side of things, the limited side of things. Now, I'm going to be honest, I've always been somewhat against limiting things for customers. However, I can fully appreciate the fact that some indie games would never get a physical release unless it was a limited run. Of course, that means it doesn't give a free pass to people like Sega limiting stuff like Persona, because of course that's a very niche franchise that nobody has heard of and would never have sold well without having a limited release. But it did keep me back on my collecting. I wasn't buying everything. I'm not buying everything. If I see a limited run release, I might look it up, see if it's worth the wait. All of the limited games that I have picked up so far, I feel like I've had some kind of connection to. Valkyria Chronicles. I found something new and interesting like Dark Deity and Shovel Knight Dig. And it made meaning skipping some of these limited releases a lot more easier. If it was a game I had some passing interest in, I'd consider it. But it also meant that there was a lot of games that I just could easily skip. Games such as remakes such as Croc, Glover, Rugrats, titles that I wouldn't consider picking up myself. It made skipping them so much easier. I don't need to have everything in the collection. What I want for the collection is for somebody to come in and find something they can play, something they can enjoy, or a new favourite. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, if you are coming in full of sports games and first-person shooters, you might find some disappointment here. But if your eyes are open, if you are open to trying some new experiences, this collection is here for you. I genuinely think people are going to look back at the Nintendo Switch era very differently, because this console arrived at a very strange moment in gaming history. Physical media is fading, digital storefronts are taken over, and somehow this weird little hybrid console became a celebration of physical gaming. Indie games got preserved physically. Niche JRPGs got box releases. Strange experimental games found audiences, and collecting started feeling exciting again. Not to mention the absolutely fantastic first-party releases from Nintendo themselves. It's not perfect, it's not cheap, it's definitely not healthy for my wallet, but it's exciting. 300 Nintendo Switch games later, and honestly, I still feel excited walking into game stores. I feel excited to be able to rummage through a selection of Switch games and find a new favourite. A title that just about everybody else is not talking about, but is worthy of being in a collection. And I'm not even going to say this is exclusive just to the Nintendo Switch. Share with me your own personal experiences. Do you feel this way about collecting for PlayStation 4 or even PlayStation 5 or Xbox or any other console in general? I don't know what it is. The Switch itself, it just feels magical to me. I just love the ability to be able to walk into a shop and just find something new. And of course, it's still physical, which is very important. We've seen with the Nintendo Switch 2, we're not going to have that same experience to an extent. Some publishers do seem to be kind of working towards giving us more physical releases, but it still seems few and far between. What do you guys think? Are you enjoying collecting for the Switch, or do you have a console that you feel that excitement of walking into a shop to find new games for? Let me know in the comments.